Is the US at war with Gen Z's favorite app? I am, of course, referring to the latest plan to ban TikTok. Many know TikTok as the viral video app that gained massive popularity during the pandemic. But the US says it poses a security risk. Does it? I'm Myriam, and this is The Stream.
Hey, United States government, can I ask what our priorities are right now?
TikTok is being banned!
TikTok, if you will, it is the 24/7 news channel of so many of our young people, and it's like Al Jazeera on steroids.
So the TikTok ban this time feels pretty inevitable.
So the only thing that this TikTok ban bill has proven to me is that the government can, in fact, get their together to get things done, right?
When it comes to banning the f***ing Renegade app is the one time that they decide to unite forces and come together. You know, when the homelessness rates are going up.
If TikTok gets banned, I will personally make sure that Instagram Reels is under the full grip of the People's Republic of China and the Chinese Communist Party.
Is China stealing my information? I'm an 18-year-old girl in Michigan. What am I gonna do for China? Take my information. I don't care.
The app cannot be banned. I'm trying to change my life on here. I'm just one viral video away.
Within a few months, Americans might lose access to the platform if a bill that recently passed through the House of Representatives is signed into law. The US wants the Beijing-based company which owns TikTok to sell the app to a US company over what it says are privacy and national security concerns. But critics say this is actually about censoring young voices. Joining me to discuss this today are three US-based TikTok content creators and organizers. Kahlil Greene, a digital creator and speaker, also known as the Gen Z historian. Nikita Redkar, comedian and writer and content creator, known as Professor at Bimbo University on TikTok. And Wally Rashid, an entrepreneur with a background in research, whose content focuses on Palestine and US-Israel relations. Welcome to you, my wonderful panel. Thank you for being here. Nikita, let me kick off with you. Tell us a little bit about the content that you create on TikTok and why the platform is so important to you.
Hi, so I talk about news, pop culture, and economics for the girls. So think of news meets Barbiecore. I distill this mostly complicated information in just fun ways that women would enjoy and see things through our lens. And I think TikTok is really important because it allows me to reach an audience that maybe doesn't like to watch traditional news or learn things in rigorous academics and boring ways. And I just, I think it would be quite a loss to lose that audience. And I think that a lot of people have learned things from my videos and just had more fun learning things that way.
Awesome. Well, Wally, what is it about TikTok which makes it Gen Z's app of choice?
Yeah, there are several factors that contribute to TikTok's popularity among Gen Z. Two that immediately come to mind are authenticity and community. Gen Z, more than any other generation, values authenticity both in the content they consume and the content they create. Other social media platforms really do promote a more polished self-image, and when we look at TikTok, you tend to see more real, authentic videos, and Gen Z really connects with that. And what we also see is that this translates into communities and interactions and genuine relations on TikTok that you're just not really getting on other social media platforms.
Kahlil, what's at stake here then if the ban does go ahead?
Well, there are a few obvious things that are at stake. There are over 150 million active users on TikTok in the United States alone that'll use, for a lot of people, their preferred app of choice. There are thousands of small businesses that'll also lose their ability to reach customers and potential employees. And then, of course, there's the underlying concern that many young people have that we'll lose our ability to express free speech in the way that we've been doing on TikTok ever since 2020, after the death of George Floyd and the protests that followed, TikTok has been a place for organizing politically, for getting people to vote, for getting people to protest. And it's one of the apps that's been the most effective for this cause. So losing TikTok will be a huge blow to young people's ability to organize in this way.
Now, not everyone agrees that the app is a force for good. Take a look at this.
I think it makes complete sense for the US government to require that TikTok not be run by a Chinese company in America, because just think for a second, would another country allow, like would China allow, or would Russia allow America or Great Britain or any of these other places, would they allow them to have a social media foothold that literally can shape the minds of all of its people? I don't think they would.
Let me tell you about TikTok and why I'm glad it could be banned. There was a phase when TikTok convinced me I had cancer. Because the algorithm... Guys, don't laugh. The algorithm kept showing me colon cancer. Because like the algorithm gets so specific. And I was pregnant at the time.
Scary.
And they were like, I was 8 months pregnant and I was constipated a lot. And my doctor just told me, you're pregnant. Now I'm dying. Give money to my all my algorithm was cancer people.
Okay, Kahlil, I see you itching to come back in there. Please, some reaction to that video.
So the person who's saying that TikTok convinced them they had cancer just needs to elevate their media literacy skills. I have a friend named Joel Burvell. He's known as a medical mythbuster, and he creates content around the issues in medicine and issues in healthcare within the Black community. And his content has literally reached people and saved their lives, told them about diagnoses that they would not know that they've had. So TikTok has been a force for good. People, of course, need to apply media literacy to it. But I think the take that TikTok is bad because it can convince one person they had cancer, which didn't seem to have any consequential effects, or in Trevor Noah's case, saying that no other country would allow something like TikTok to exist. Well, in the EU, specifically in the UK, TikTok does exist, and TikTok has partnered with organizations like the BBC to elevate young journalists and other ways of using the platform for good and integrating it with society. So it's not a universal belief that TikTok just has to go for a society to function.
Wally, I want to come to you. The US government is saying that this ban is necessary for data security reasons, since TikTok is owned by ByteDance, a Chinese company. Are you concerned that China is going to steal your data, or is doing it already?
Well, if the concern is really about a foreign government trying to steal our data, I think that all eyes should not be on China, but rather Israel. If we look back in 2023, Voyager Labs, an Israeli company, used 38,000 avatars on Facebook and Instagram to capture user data. And if we're looking at social media platforms in general, Clario Software Company actually did a study in 2021 and found that companies that are collecting the most user data are by far Facebook at 80% user data. And then we have Instagram, and TikTok actually ranks at 6th place, only collecting about 46% of user data. So I really think that this promotion and this narrative that China is taking user data is just a cover up for what's really going on, which is to suppress anti-Israel and pro-Palestinian content that we're seeing on TikTok, especially following the crisis that's going on in Gaza.
Well, on the topic of why this ban is raising eyebrows among many, let's take a look at this.
We live in a society where our Congress cannot agree on basic things, like how to ensure that Flint has access to clean water. How do we fix our public education system? Congress can't agree on how to stop homegrown terrorists and individuals in the United States, American citizens who are trying to influence our election illegally, but yet they are worrying about a foreign government. Congress can't agree on how to stop other social media platforms from selling our data, but they're worried about TikTok. This is the dystopia that we live in.
Nikita, does this ban or proposed ban reflect your political needs and priorities?
Absolutely not. Most people that I know are using TikTok for very innocuous reasons. For example, looking up how to cook a recipe online, or looking up what outfit goes with black boots in the springtime. And obviously there are so many more urgent political issues at hand. You know, we have a growing homelessness crisis. We have a growing economic crisis. We have a cost of living crisis that many people my age are suffering from People are holding 2 jobs at minimum just to get by. And it seems like this is the thing that the government is so focused on. It seems very out of sync with our real priorities.
Kahlil, as a historian, is there anything in US history which might perhaps make you skeptical around the motives for this ban?
Yeah, we're talking a lot about foreign governments here, but our own government has a history of quote unquote making itself an adversary against its own citizens with the data that they can collect. And this goes back centuries, from the Sedition Act of World War I, where people weren't even allowed to protest the US involvement in World War I. There's all of the horrible cases during COINTELPRO and the CIA's oversight, the FBI and the CIA's oversight over domestic threats, which are largely civil rights activists. And even in recent history, there's been the Patriot Act and all of the overreach of government intrusion that came with that. So there's a lot of precedent for Americans to be concerned with our own government. And when you're asking the question of, does this serve the political needs of the people? I mean, TikTok has already announced Project Texas, where it's moved the data of Americans to American servers under an American company called Oracle. And if there was any sort of actual solution to the issue of data privacy, it should be sweeping. It should affect all social media platforms. So this very weird take on just targeting TikTok shows that even when there is an issue, the solution is very self-serving for government interests.
Now, there is one issue on TikTok which has been consistently flagged as a problem by some American officials. Let's take a look.
The issue in the United States of support for Israel is not left and right. It is young and old. And the numbers of young people who think that Hamas's, massacre was justified is shockingly and terrifyingly high. And so we really have a TikTok problem, a Gen Z problem, that our community needs to put the same brains that gave us Kahlil, the same brains that gave us all these other amazing innovations, need to put our energy toward this, like, fast.
Wally, how much of this do you think is about the growing support among young Americans for Palestine?
Well, I saw a funny tweet, actually, and it said that Gen Z went on TikTok and said free Palestine, and the US government responded by saying, oh, hell no. And it seems like that's definitely playing out. Right after October 7th, we saw a huge resurgence of this bill that was eventually passed in the House. Just a few days before the bill was passed in the House, we started hearing about Reject AIPAC, an anti-Israel lobby group, which was unprecedented. We also know that the Jewish Federation of North America backed the bill that went through the House, which was also an unprecedented move. So it seems that the mainstream narrative of Israel being this innocent nation surrounded by hostile Arabs is just beginning to crack away. And the US government and Israel are working together to really try to suppress that. And I think the TikTok ban resurgence is directly related to that. And I do want to go back to that video that you previously showed, the lady speaking about how the US government just can never come and work together. And I just find it so interesting that with this TikTok ban, it was such a fast bipartisan move. And it really does make you question, what are the factors and the individuals that are at play that are contributing to this fast push through the House?
Well, on that note, Kahlil, what do you make of the timing of this proposed ban ahead, of course, of the US elections?
I think the TikTok ban is something that's been pushed consistently when there's been a rise of progressive movements in general. And I think it's really important for everyone to see the sort of through line there and how the government oftentimes, whether it be the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, sees TikTok as a way of changing the status quo. And in that way, a negative thing. The first TikTok ban came after the wave of Black Lives Matter protests and awareness around critical race theory and issues like that. And it came with Donald Trump. And then again, last year, TikTok came at a rise at a time where people were once again waking up to a lot of the issues within the Democratic Party when it came to climate change and promises that were made and promises that weren't kept, even by the Democratic Party. And then we're seeing the culmination of this on the election year, in my opinion, because TikTok is really seen as a place where political information cannot be controlled, where misinformation is constantly, of course, distributed, but at the same time countered, whether it be misinformation from other users or misinformation from mainstream media. So I think that that really scares politicians because it's something that's a complete wild card in an election year. And I think for that reason, they've all come together to say, let's just take this out of the equation because it's not working for us.
Well, concerns over online radicalization on the platform have also been raised, and this is what the internet had to say about it. It's so funny that libs think the youth have become radicalized due to Chinese influence and TikTok. Like blood, these kids were in school when Sandy Hook happened. When they asked if their life mattered more than guns, you told them to duck next time. You radicalized them. Nikita, I want to come to you about this. There has been research, of course, into how the TikTok algorithm can amplify harmful content. Are you convinced by this argument at all?
No, absolutely not. And I want to kind of piggyback on what Kahlil said earlier about media literacy and the importance of that. I think instead of just outright banning an app because you're scared of the information you can't control on it, it's a progression of society to evolve with this like new form of technology that we have. And it's necessary to teach kids this in school, you know, kind of like how we learned computers when we were in school instead of just banning them. And, you know, we were taught like how to type. And so, yeah, I just think it's like a natural evolution. And I also think that seeing kids as getting radicalized is not necessarily a bad thing, considering, you know, there's, like information is, yes, you know, maybe not being controlled, but we're learning from the people themselves. Like we're seeing content from Palestinians themselves and their voices being amplified. And, you know, previously those voices were suppressed in the past. And I think if we're talking about radicalization on social media, we need to talk about the radicalization on Facebook and the alt-right revolution that has come from Facebook and January 6th. You know, if we're talking about TikTok, we can't not talk about that.
Wally, I want to ask you about this. I mean, I get the sense when I speak to TikTok users that there's a feeling amongst many of you that this is the grounds, the space in which you can organize maybe the basis for a counterpower within US society. I mean, is this what the government is really afraid of?
Yeah, it's really interesting speaking on mobilization, because unlike so many other social media platforms, TikTok has the ability to garner mass support for a specific cause at such a fast speed. In my example, actually, I put together a petition speaking on settler violence, and just within a few days, I was able to garner over 15,000 signatures on that petition. So TikTok is able to promote a lot of change very quickly and bring together a lot of different people. And when we talk about radicalization, I honestly think it's just the wrong word to use here. I would say more so what TikTok is bringing is realization that the mainstream narrative of Israel, especially of being this innocent nation, is just beginning to crumble. We're beginning to see that it is an aggressor nation and that the Palestinian people are being oppressed. And in American culture, especially, that narrative just hasn't been spoken about. And we've also seen that Pew Research actually conducted a study back in 2022. And for the first time in US history, Americans between the ages of 18 to 29 had a more favorable view of the Palestinians than they did of the Israelis, 61% in comparison to 57%. I think that raises huge alarm in the pro-Israel lobby here in the US. And this TikTok ban being pushed was definitely backed by the pro-Israel lobby, such as the Jewish Federation of North America. So I think what's really happening right now is the realization that the mainstream narrative is incorrect, and a lot of people are beginning to mobilize to counter that.
Well, this isn't just about a political platform being erased. There is also a concern among many content creators as regards loss of income. Look at this.
I think what the government fails to realize is even if they ban this app, we've already seen too much. We have knowledge of things that we would have never known before TikTok. And that knowledge is not going to disappear. We're not going to believe your propaganda even without TikTok. I also think they fail to realize the consequences of banning this app, because at first glance, yeah, it's just a dancing app. But people have built businesses on here, millions of businesses. And no one has seen a change in e-commerce like this since Amazon. Now imagine if Amazon just shut down all the things they're connected to, all the businesses they support, all the people that work for them. That would be catastrophic. So why wouldn't we think the same of TikTok? What will happen when you take away all of these people's income?
Kahlil, I see you itching to come back in on that one as well. What did you want to say?
So when I graduated college, I made the conscious decision to turn down a full-time job offer to be a full-time creator, mainly through TikTok. So I'm one of the people who's personally invested in TikTok's continuation along the lines of course, I just believe it's a huge 1A issue, but also it's a platform where people have been able to build their livelihoods. And I think that's very important to recognize. Specifically, what I have is education business. And to address a concern that people have head on, yes, TikTok can be a place where people share reductive perspectives on history or share misinformation or disinformation. But at the same time, there's a wave and a force for good. And the spirit of the First Amendment is that in order to counter bad information, you don't censor it. You instead actually offer a different perspective and explain why your perspective is better. And I've been able to do that through my education business that's facilitated through TikTok. I know all other types of creators who have been doing advocacy and have other businesses that are product-based, even ones around mental health and other issues like that, a lot of social impact causes. So I think that there's like sort of a huge economic blow, both to the most general businesses, to the social impact businesses, to the small creators trying to start a business if TikTok were to go away.
And Wally, you're also an entrepreneur and you rely on TikTok for your business also, don't you?
Yes, I do. Absolutely. And this is definitely going to take a toll on my business and a lot of other small businesses. TikTok, I've noticed just among all of the other social media platforms, it really is able to garner that sense of community. And it's really the community that supports small businesses in the US. There was also concern, and I was just reading recently on the news that there is a widespread fear regarding a stock market bubble just bursting. And this, combined with TikTok potentially being banned, is leading just to a lot of fear in Americans in general. And we're going to end up seeing that play out over the year. And we'll see how the TikTok plan plays out as well. I do want to hop off Nikita's point as well. We were looking at the younger generation, and I previously spoke about how the younger generation values authenticity more than any other generation. So when it comes to the mainstream narrative crumbling, that really is because the younger generation are able to see right through those lies. And such as the video said, that's not going to change if TikTok is banned. Americans have already seen the truth, and ultimately, regardless of the TikTok ban, the mainstream agenda just isn't going to suit them anymore.
Nikita, I want to ask you, based on everything we've just discussed today, what is banning TikTok actually a solution to?
Banning TikTok seems to just be a solution of the government wanting to control the narrative and wanting to control what type of information gets out there. But as the person said before in the TikTok that you posted, it's too late. We already know. And now it's just even more transparent that this is a very obvious push for censorship, and it's a very obvious push for people not getting information right from the source. But I think that this is just going to serve to even give us a spirit of changing things even more. Like now is really a cultural shift that we're witnessing right in front of us between people who have had power for so long and have so much uninterrupted power for so long. And now we're kind of seeing that shift in some of that going back to the people a little bit and us kind of coming together and seeing that things right now don't have to be the way that they are.
Well, Kahlil, I want to ask you, with so much at stake, therefore, for young people, both in terms of what the platform represents for organizing and community, but also financially, I mean, surely there's going to be some pushback if this ban does go ahead. I mean, the young people are not going to just take this lying down, are they?
I don't think so, but I will say one strategy that's been very effective for the government is how fast and how sly they were with this ban. For a lot of my peers, there was almost a sense of boy who cried wolf when they first heard about it this year, and that there's been talk of a TikTok ban once every year, probably since 2020. So they just didn't take it as seriously this time. And finally, when it went through the House, that's when a lot of people woke up. But even now, because once again, Americans have such low literacy on how our government works, largely because of our failed education system and largely being combated by people like me on TikTok who are making them more aware, there's not a sort of universal understanding understanding of the next few steps, that it has to go through the Senate, that the president has to sign it. They don't understand necessarily when the timeline is for this. So I think young people want to organize, but because we've been kept so politically in the dark, largely because of the same problems that we need TikTok for, it's very hard to organize around this issue. But I think as we raise awareness and as we do interviews like this, our generation will have more of an education for how to combat this sort of issue.
Well, on that very important point, I want to say thank you so much to you, Kahlil, Nikita, and Wally. And of course, myself and the team here love to hear from you. So please do get in touch. Reach out on social media and let us know if there is a conversation or a topic you want us to address. Don't be shy. Use the hashtag or the handle AJStream, and we will look into it. Stay awake, and I'll see you soon.